Hi,
Hi, Maulik, sir.
how are you?
Good, sir. Just a minute. I'm just kind of finding a place to sit. Actually, we're at a
Yeah,
Delhi
yeah.
office today.
Oh,
Just a
okay.
minute.
Okay. Hi, Joel.
Hi, hi, am I audible? Check it.
Yes, Joel, you are.
Okay, great. So I'll just turn on my camera and just do a quick check.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. Can you see me and hear me well?
Yeah, super.
Hi, Joel. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is my audio and the video clear now?
Yes, perfectly
Yes.
fine. So I'll just request Ankit to join. He's here at Delhi office itself with me. Just a minute.
Okay. Okay.
So Ankit is joining in a minute or less than a minute.
Okay. Okay.
So I think we are okay with the flow of today's, or should we discuss it again? We have 5 more minutes, 4 minutes to go.
Yeah, we can briefly talk about it.
Sure.
Uh,
Hi, Ankit.
Hi,
Hey, hi.
Ankit.
Hey, Maulik, hi.
Good seeing you.
Same here, same here. So Jagrati and me, we are in the same.
Oh, okay. In the same room, by the way, or
Not in the
Same
room.
place, different rooms.
Different room.
same office? Okay. Okay. It is the Noida office, is it?
Delhi.
Wow. It is very interesting. All three sessions we have done for SME, all have been in Noida office only. This, not Noida, sorry. This Delhi office.
Delhi.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just adjusting space so that it's better. Hey, hi, Joel.
Hi, Ankit. Hi, everyone.
So, Ankit, I
Good
was
seeing
just
you,
asking
Joel.
whether we want to just
Thanks
go
for
through
joining.
the process again, or is it just fine?
I think it's fine. Maulik will start. He will introduce us.
Yeah.
We have two topics. I can share that slide here. Since we have few minutes, we can do.
Yeah.
Joel and me, we have rehearsed, so we are. So these are two topics we'll cover. Maulik, we can just talk on this and then we can jump to the next. You can start and you can keep it at this level, and then so that you don't have to remember, and then you can introduce that, and then you can say we are today. This is a for today.
Correct. Good.
I'll just start by addressing the audience, and I'll introduce everybody on the panel, and then I'll take it, give it to Maulik sir, and then he'll further take the discussion ahead, and then we'll give it to you and Joel. And just a suggestion, Maulik sir.
Yeah. Maulik ji, you would want to introduce us, or we can just do it ourselves? We can just show this.
I think I can call you, Ankit, and you can continue with that from and just take it from there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jagrati.
Yeah, so I was just saying that after I will be speaking, I'll be putting my video off so that only 3 of you will be visible. And then when Maulik sir is done, he can also off his video if required. And then only Ankit and Joel will be visible.
Once I'm through, I'll turn off my video and it's Ankit, you and Joel we'll take the show forward, of course. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. So I think we have a minute as well.
I'll share once we are live.
Yeah.
Joel, nice Bundy.
Joel, you're on mute.
Okay.
You're
It was on mute. So what does that mean, Bundy? I didn't know.
the
The
Nehru
jacket.
jacket or
The
Modi
jacket.
Okay.
Take it.
So Ankit, you're in the Delhi office of NASCOM? Okay,
Yes, sure.
great.
So it's 3. I think we should let the participants in and then we'll wait a minute or two.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everyone, for joining in for today's third part of the AI workshop that we are hosting from the last 2 months. We'll just wait a couple of minutes for everybody to join in, and then we'll start with the discussion today. Thank you. We have 42 participants. Should we start? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in for today's AI workshop, third part of it. Today, we have with us Mr. Maulik Bhansali. He is the Vice Chair of SME Council, also runs a company by the name NetWeb, based out of Vadodara. Good afternoon, sir. Other than that, we have Ankit Bose. He's the head of AI team at NASCOM. And with us, we have Joel George also. He is the GTM leader of data and AI at Kyndral. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session. Over to you, Maulik, sir. Please take a lead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jagriti. And great seeing you, Ankit and Joel. Thanks for joining. And thank you, friends, for being with us today for this third session or the third part of the 3 workshops that we have, three-part workshops that we have for AI for SMEs, which is understanding the innovation side of it and driving the growth, and how do we use that as big opportunity that is there in front of us. As part of the third part today, we are going to be having understand from Ankit and from Joel about the role of emerging AI and generative AI and the businesses and the impact. I think it'll be a good idea for us to understand the use cases, the business cases, and as we all hear about AI and generative AI specifically, a lot is being discussed in the industries amongst our customers. Possibly there may be some questions which may be coming to us from our customers, from our clients in terms of while we all talk of proof of concept, but where is the proof of value? How do you really extract real value out of this huge opportunity that's in front of us? And how do we put that value in front of our customers or for our own businesses? And how do we create some fantastic, impactful offerings, which really brings in value? And how do we kind of create business plan around that? So I think this is something which is very important to all of us as businesses. And without wasting any further more time, I would like to hand over to Ankit. And thanks again, friends. On behalf of NASSCOM, it's my great opportunity to welcome you, Ankit and Joel, on behalf of NASSCOM and the SME Council. Over to you, friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maulik ji. I think, and very warm welcome and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining in the third part of the series. So basically, we have covered 2 sessions earlier before this. We have seen what is AI, what is data, how is it changing the world. We have seen how AI and GenAI is, evolving, and what are the trends which are coming, what are the use cases. And today we'll delve more and think of how the new emerging trends are there in the businesses and what's the impact it's building, right? And some of the content which I will share, this is just coming fresh of the oven, right? So these are basically studies what we have done just now. I will be sharing that, and it's still not out. It will be out in a week. But again, I think that's what we'll see. And then we'll jump into a deep dive of how, as a SME, right? How, as a startup, we should think of building an AI or GenAI offering, right? What are the various modalities? What are the strengths we should have? At the same time, how, as a team, we should think, right? So that's what we'll cover. And I have today with me Maulik ji and definitely George, my friend here. Let me introduce, I think, Joel. So Joel, you would want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ankit ji and Maulik ji, for the opportunity to come and share my few thoughts and wisdom with the rest of the team here. So by way of introduction, I'm part of Kyndral. Now, Kyndral is a spin-off from IBM. So we're about 88,000 people present in 175 countries. And yeah, I take care of the data and AI services offering from a worldwide perspective. So yeah, I'm part of, Kyndral has 6 practices, so I'm part of the applications data and AI practice. Been with the data and AI space for the last decade or so in various capacities as product management, professional offering manager, on the engineering side, finance, and also on the sales side, right? More recently, consulting included. So obviously have a well-rounded view of what it takes to succeed as an SI, as a product company, as a customer. So I'm here to share some of those learnings. And yeah, I think been with Kyndral and IBM for about 16 years. So that's me. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Joel. And me, I think most of you would know me because we have done 2 series. I think Ankit Bose, I'm head of AI at NASSCOM and been in various capacities in different companies, including IBM, Reliance, Satyam. That's me. I think we'll move to the topic, right? So I think the first message I would want to give you, everyone, is regardless of your business and the domain, right? GenAI, it will impact every organization, right? May it be your own capacity, may it be your customers who you're dealing with, right? So that's the first thing I would want to emphasize, right? And then I think I would request Joel to give us a quick snapshot of what we have seen. I saw a message, someone couldn't join the last 2 series, right? But again, I think I will request Joel to give us a short, a summary of what the GenAI, outlook is. Joel, can you take us through that?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I think when we talk about generative AI, that's got a lot of buzz and attention in the recent past. But again, I think if you look at the genesis of generative AI, it's not something that's just happened overnight, right? So there have been foundations for generative AI that started several years ago, right? So I think in this slide, we're just going to touch upon the evolution and then how it's being perceived as useful. I think organizations are still trying to see how they're going to derive value from it. What is the return on investment, revenue improvement. So all those business models are being worked upon. But even as that happens, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there is something very disruptive happening around us in the AI space, right? And I think until the generative AI wave happened, I think there was a lot of disbelief on whether AI is going to really find its sweet spot in businesses, because it was perceived that a lot of decision making will be automated. There is confirmation bias, explainability bias, and all those things, right? But I think with ChatGPT and then how organizations have evolved the base capability of ChatGPT and advanced it further, I think all those doubts have been put to rest, right? And I think we have NASSCOM in India, but I work with worldwide audience, right? But every country is looking at AI very seriously, right? So I think one of the recent example is Finland, right? As a government, they are the first to kind of have completely digital passports, right? So that means a lot of image processing, computer vision, a lot of AI use cases in the backend. So I think that's the adoption. And therefore, it's not a choice, as Ankit said, for us to whether or not to understand GenAI and apply it. Because if you are not doing, your nearest competitor is doing, and other vendors in the ecosystem are doing that as well. So GenAI and AI, one of the most common questions that I'm asked is, so you support AI or you're part of the GenAI team? So I'm like, hold on a second, right? So AI is the umbrella term for anything that we use artificial intelligence, right? Or in other words, try and train models to behave like human beings, and not just the power of one human being, but obviously you multiply that by 1 million and put different demographics, context, and industry verticals and so on, and that gives you that ability to think like 1 million people would think, right? And in supersonic speed, without having any error opportunities, etc. So that's the umbrella term, right? So AI ML has been obviously the bedrock of how organizations have been adopting driverless cars, or concierges, which is automated, or legal systems that are automated. If you've been to the US, you would have seen the Tesla driverless car. So all this has been happening, right? And deep learning was considered the the most sophisticated use case until GPT came and disrupted that industry. Now, let me tell you, no analyst expected this, right? So I spent some time in March with Gartner at Orlando, and I asked them the question, are you caught by surprise? And their answer was, surprise is an understatement. So that's the speed at which generative AI has changed the dynamics of our industry, right? In general, and adoption of AI for sure, right? So what is generative AI, right? So for those of you who missed the previous session, it's basically using artifacts and being able to use those artifacts to generate new artifacts, right? And what are some of the examples? When I talk about generating artifacts, we'll go through that in detail. But basically, the effort that it takes to generate artifacts in the form of text, or images, or documents, right, or any of those, being able to use historical data, apply contextual learning, have the ability to kind of explain, contextualize what is being sought, and then produce those unique artifacts. It's not reproducing what's already there. A big question is, we've got chatbots always, right? What is the difference between conversational AI and generative AI, right? Conversational AI would obviously query what's already existing within a database or a warehouse and give you the information. Very, very less intuitive, if I can say so, right? It doesn't kind of reason out. It doesn't have the ability to think, and more importantly, it didn't have the ability to generate new artifacts, which is possible with GenAI, right? So the Gartner definition is out here, but I'm not going to repeat it. That's my point of view. And I think with GenAI, the other new term that has come about, or you might be hearing about it a lot, is the large language models, right? So examples of those are GPT-like models. This has tremendous processing power, and it can generate text, and obviously extensions of that are being worked upon. Now, the next section here sort of talks about the evolution of GenAI. As you can see, GCP started with the transformers in 2017, and the journey from there until now has been phenomenal. There were phases of disbelief, right? You had synthetic data generation, transfer learning, computer vision, a lot of disruptive AI techniques along the way, right? And I think the adoption and the speed at which organizations and boards are considering GenAI has been, staggering, right? So testimony to this is all the three major cloud providers, right? Microsoft, AWS, and Google. Microsoft obviously, hit the headlines on Wall Street with their multi-billion-dollar investment in OpenAI. Disclosure, we work with Microsoft as part of my organization, and we are leveraging the partnership to see how we can use that to help our customers, right? Similarly, the partnership with Hugging Face, right, that Amazon Web Services made an announcement on, and Google with Bard, it's taken GPT to the next level, right? So I think we talk about Chat GPT a lot, but I think it's important to understand how some of these new plays are being unleashed. And then, of course, you've got GPT-4 as well that is, coming about. So this is how GenAI as a capability has evolved. Now, how do we apply this, right? As I said, it's generating fresh artifacts using historical data and then the intelligence to intuitively understand what you're seeking and then being able to produce that outcome. So some of the key use cases there are, building reports, again, time-consuming, mundane job, creating videos, right, summarizing a particular situation or scenario or status or whatever, creating content, creating codes, right, being able to modify codes, reuse codes, assist end users in various aspects. For example, as I said, you can have you could be applying for a loan, right, or you might be making a reservation, or you could be seeking help at an airport, right, where you may be lost for directions, or you may not be happy with the way the infrastructure is set up, or you're struggling with a specific provider or a vendor. So all these things can, obviously with GenAI, you have the ability to ask the question, communicate with the people you want to communicate in an automated fashion, again, not being dependent on human beings, and then come back and provide that assistance needed, which otherwise was dependent on a human being. Now, does this mean we replace human beings from the system completely? The answer is no. To be able to develop this, right, so there is a famous quote, right, and it's being used that whenever you develop any GenAI use cases, you need to have human in the loop, right? So to be able to validate and confirm the results are favorable, you always need human in the loop, right? So that's on the assistance part. And then of course, you can classify or catalog information into different buckets. A very time-consuming process. Just organizing your own data on your Windows device or Mac takes a lot of time, and someone like me, I would really love it because I'm not very organized with my files, right? So I think that's the way you can use it. And think about it, if I'm using it as one user, and if you have an organization which is like 500 people, all of them can use it. The information that you need from external sources, internal sources are all cataloged and available at the push of a button, right? So these are some of the key use cases that are finding adoption. Now, as you do this, it's important to make sure you are applying responsible AI guardrails. What that means, I think Ankit's covered that quite extensively, and NASSCOM's done a lot of content, produced a lot of content on the responsible AI area. So I'm not going to go in detail on that, but it's really understand to sort of look at fairness, explainability, reliability, and then I talked about human in the loop, so you'll see mention of that. Security and privacy, again, no compromises on this front, because in the interest of moving things faster, running at the speed of business, you don't want to have a breach, right? And you get the attention of the press for all the wrong reasons. You might want to be in the press for all the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. And then now this is opening up new avenues, right? From a technical standpoint, from a career standpoint. I think the role of prompt engineer was not even existing, right? So six months ago, right? Or not heard of. So the success of GenAI depends on what is the kind of prompt libraries that you have, what's that corpus you have that your capability can call upon and put to work. And then how are you designing your prompts, right? So the prompt engineering as a science has picked up a lot of momentum, and I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes the highest paid profession in the it used to be data scientists, of course. I think that is at a big risk because of the speed at which organizations are adopting. Net, this is the hot topic. Every board meeting there is a question: how are we looking at GenAI in our organization? What is the roadmap? When does it see the light of the day? So that's the context. So with that, I'll pass this back to Ankit, who can share what he's found, on the market data research. Back to you, Ankit.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you. A very good summary of those who you were not there in the last 2 sessions. Joel covered it all. I think he gave a perspective of Kyndral and how they are seeing. But again, I think that aligns with what is happening in the market, right? So let's move to this view, right? So if you see this, right? So again, the current view is the LLMs or the foundation models are available in 2 formats. One is closed, one is open, right? Closed, as Joel said, GPT, OpenAI is one. Microsoft has few of them. Bard, Google's, right? And there are a bunch of them. And then if you see the open ones, we have Vicuna, we have Llama, we have Llama 2 has come in. We have so many of them, right? So hundreds of them, right? But again, I think, so if you see, I think these are the major adaptation trends which are coming up, right? So here again, 3 categories here: the data provider, the base data provider, the party who is hosting it, right? Either it's on cloud or on self-hosted. So these are 3 modalities which are coming, right? The first modality is fully public. These are base models as we know them, right? The GPT, the Bard, all of them, they're fully publicly hosted. That's the first modality. The second modality is you have models hosted or models provided, but hosted on cloud, right? Like Microsoft OpenAI, on Azure. That's this one, right? And the third one is you have base model and then you fine tune it and host it. These are again open, right? Open ones, which you fine tune and host it on a cloud provider. So this is again a managed, secure, fine-tuned sort of modality. Then the hybrid private, right? Here you have a base model and you are basically hosting it in your own environment or in a private environment, right? And this again could be hybrid cloud sort of thing. And the ones which are more regulated ones, probably like defense and few regulated sectors, you have fully private, that is base model, and then you fine tune it in your own premises, which is very restricted access. So I think these are the modalities which are emerging, right? So I think again a lot of usage is happening on this layer, that is the managed secure prompting and managed secure fine tune. I think these are the 2 which are most prevalent. People are either taking the open or closed source model, and they are using it like using API and creating a wrapper on that, or they're fine tuning it on this one, and then they're creating a wrapper. Again, fine tuning can be at a different level, right? You either fine tune the initial layers, or you basically replace the whole weights in the model, right? Again, that is less seen. People are finding the initial layers, right? And they are using vector database sort of scenarios where they're managing the inference either from a vector database or the fine-tuned model, right? Again, one more trend which is emerging is RAG, right? Which is again, you give a data to the fine-tuned model and ask the model to give only output from that, that particular data. So these are the trends which are emerging, right? Again, this was a bit more technical, right? So but I wanted to start with a technical trend and implementation trend which is happening. Let's move to the building blocks, what we see, right? So there are 7 building blocks what we are seeing, right? When customer is choosing to implement a GenAI. First is strategy. Second is the right partner and right technology, right? And this right partner technology could be, if you go back, could be from this or this. This is the major trend what we are seeing. Then the data, right? Either it is your own data you're giving or the data which the provider or technology partner has, and then you fine tune on that. Operating model, talent, in-house talent or a partner talent. And then after you build this, then you fine tune it and you build certain risk and governance practices to mitigate hallucination, bias, all of that, right? So that's what is done. And after you build this layer of risk and governance, what is happening, customer, what they are doing is they're trying to adopt it in their use cases, right? Again, use case in the use case, when they're adopting, there are a lot of initial, to and fro, because once you deploy a model in production, which is for your use case, it has to be particularly fine-tuned for your requirement, right? So again, I think adoption and change management is a process, right? So it's not that if you deploy a model or if a customer is deploying a model for use case, it's like, done forever. You will have to fine-tune based on your, feedback, what you're getting from your users. At the same time, accuracy. At the same time, you also have to fine-tune based on your changing data, right? So that's what are the 7 building blocks of any GenAI or, even AI for that matter, use case, right? So that's the first view, right? So we saw what are the technical trends. We saw now what are the 7 building blocks which are emerging. Let's move to, what's the illustrative, what's the current landscape or the architecture which is emerging, right? Again, if you see here, you have so many different boxes. I think let's come from down, right? So you have, or let's come from up, right? So you have the use case, right? The experience layer. Most of the customers are building a experience layer, and they are building an API gateway, right? Now the API gateway is connected to a data source, which could be a set of embeddings, unstructured data, all of that, right? And then, it would talk to a model hub, right? Now this model hub could be talking to a closed source or an open source, right? And again, if you come down, they will have a layer of LLM ops, which is written as ML ops here. So you have that. And then that will be connected to your current existing, ERPs or CRMs or various, systems which you already would have deployed. And now it is either hosted on a cloud or a, on-prem premises, right? So this is how a top to down structure is emerging in terms of nuts and bolts, right? If you see on the left side, now this shows how, you are deploying it. You are either giving app as a service, or it could be an internal service to your customers or your external service to your customers, right? Again, from SME perspective, I think you will be building this for your customers. If you want to develop an AI service line, what will happen is, this app as a service will be either for internal customers or external customers for your customer, right? Now, again, a bifurcation here is, or what we are seeing is, a lot of customers and, enterprises, they are building first layer of intelligence using GenAI for their internal use, right? Like HR, LLM ops, right? Or HR GenAI use case, right? Or probably a policy GenAI use case, or, internal systems where you can use it for policy making, policy, suggestions, policy inputs, or travel, all of that, right? And then they're expanding to more use cases which are customer oriented. So that's a trend what is coming out, right? And I think this all will be governed by the policy management, probably the box or the tool what you build or the process what you build. Again, this all is a moving structure, right? Right now, this is the framework which is emerging, right? But this is how generally it is getting deployed, right? So let's move to the next slide. What's the impact of it, right? Again, the GenAI impact is basically happening on 4 stages, right? The change in economics in existing customer business, the scope compression, the growth in new service offerings, and gains due to the productivity increase in SG&A, right? So again, these are the 4 main areas, right, where the impact is happening in the services, the tech services business model, right? Again, if you see, there are subheads, right? In the economics of existing business, productivity gains are happening, and that is expected from you by your customer. Second is pricing is coming into discussion, because if you're doing productivity gain, definitely customer will ask, why should I pay you the same price, right? So that's a discussion happening. Then, again, the outspurt of that is, how you're building your GenAI model. A lot of this initially was getting built on cloud and, closed source, which led to an unknown cost, which was getting added, right? Now, which again links back to the increased cost because of GenAI. I think these are the things which are emerging on this. Again, scope compression here. A lot of substitution is happening. A lot of insourcing is happening, right? A lot of customers are thinking, if I've given business to X party and they're doing it this way, can we, internally do it because of the advanced tools which are available, right? How does it, compare, or how does it, happen, right? Between we building this ourselves or we outsourcing it, right? And again, automation flows is definitely very much evident and very much utilized, right? The third is again growth in service offering here. Demand is increasing because everyone would want to implement AI and GenAI in their flow, their process, and all of that. People are reimagining how the existing service lines are there. So they are re-evaluating, contracts. They are re-evaluating technology partners and various vendors, and new services are getting developed, right? And there's a lot of increase in demand of adoption of AI, right? Which was not as same as the earlier pre-Gen AI area, right? And again, I think individually the services players and the customers are seeing a lot of improved productivity and benefits in SG&A, right? So that is the trend, right? If you see on the right side again, the percentage wise, we see the change of economics in the existing landscape is shown here. I will not go through each one of them, but again, I think generally in overall, I think there are huge percentage terms in the change of economics and the new services offering development, right? So these are the two set of impact, right? So this report which I was telling, I think this is a new outlook which is coming. We are coming out with a technology services landscape using GenAI report, which will be out within this week or max by Monday. You will have access to it because if you are our members, you will have access to it. And then I think it will give you all these insights, right? And then we can have a follow-up from our SME team. They can come back to you with this report in the Slack group what we have, right? So again, I think this is the impact what we are seeing. If we move to next, right? These are the impact in terms of business functions, right? So sorry, left side is the top 4 probably internal functions in a business, right? First is definitely software development, and I think within this software development, sales, marketing, customer operations, product, and R&D, I think this constitutes a 75% of total impact in GenAI, right? Across sector, right? On the right side, if you see, the top 3 sectors, high tech, retail, and banking, we are seeing a major impact on business functions. This is global by 240 billion plus, right? Or 200 billion plus in all 3, right? Approximately. So that's what we are seeing, right? So they're huge numbers, and that entails a big opportunity for our SMEs, right? So when the contracts are getting discussed, or the service lines are getting discussed, or modalities are getting discussed of various implementation of the projects, there is the time you can play, right? There is a time you can enter and expand your presence in business, right? So let's move to the next slide. Again, it's the same, right? The 4 areas: expansion, delivery excellence, sales excellence, and productivity gain, right? So what we are seeing is 20, 30, 80, 40. That's the percentage what we are seeing here. So again, this data will be available to you. I will not go in deep because we have a lot of content to cover. I would want to cover more on the building of AI service for you. But again, I think this is what is coming, right? So expansion of your addressable market is emerging as 20% increase, delivery excellence 30%, sales excellence 80%, right? And productivity SG&A as 40%. So that's what we are seeing, right? I'll move to next slide. Again, if you see, again, two aspects. One is technology services, one is business services. So the top 5, service offerings or areas is definitely advisory. You're seeing then cloud, application development, product engineering, and managed services. I think these are the top % technology services. In the business services, CX, vertical, co-ops, and the enterprise functions, right? Again, I'll not go into each one of them, but again, this is available for you for your access, right? And I think it gives you also a view of what is the new offering you can build and you can position, and what is the reimagined service which is emerging, right? So that's this. Again, coming to the single example, right? Here, if you see the software development lifecycle, I think we have 30% improvement in delivery productivity and 80% development and higher satisfaction. This is what we are seeing. Again, if you see the service line wise application development, 30 to 40% is a total potential of reduction in effort. Infra service again 20 to 30%, application maintenance again 20 to 30%, cloud 10 to 15%, and BPO 35 to 40%. I think on the right side you see the use cases here, which are top impact use cases for that. We'll move to engineering speed, right? Here, 35 to 45% is the code generation. Documentation is the biggest piece, right? 40 to 45% is the increase in productivity. 45 to 50% is the increase in unit testing. 20 to 30 in code refactoring, and translation again same 20 to 25%, right? So as an output, I think what we see is 55%, less than 5% code is maintainable and readability, right? That's what we engineering experience we are seeing around 80%, right? So these are the numbers in the productivity experience, right? Again, this is SLDC lifecycle, software development lifecycle. We have 4 parts: planning and design, coding, testing, and building and deployment. So estimate reduction is on the right side if you see here. And I think the biggest is in testing, if you see 45 to 50%. Overall, in software development lifecycle, the estimated effort reduction is estimated to be between 30 to 40%. That's what we are anticipating. Let's see one more example, which is the sales, right? Again, these are the five steps, or 5 key areas, which is in sales, which is getting probably augmented with GenAI, right? And we have those 15 use cases here, right? So this is all available for your use, and this report is coming out. I think I just wanted to give you the emerging trends or emerging impact of GenAI, right? With that, I think this is the new outlook which is emerged due to our current study, what we have done. And I would want to call upon Joel and give a real on ground, feel and impact what he's seeing with his customers. Joel, would you want to take us through that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ankit. And I think some great research and findings there, right? Takeaways for the audience, right? So I think in terms of what we are hearing from customers and the discussion that we are having with clients as well, right? So there are about 10 or 12 key use cases that are emerging, and I think they are captured over here in this slide, right? And I'll try to briefly touch upon what each one of them would mean, right? I think the first few over here, summarization, extraction, inference, transformation that we talked about. I think we learned in the research material that productivity is improving in the SDLC lifecycle and in general, right? So IT professionals are seeing an improvement in productivity as part of the studies done by different organizations, right? To the tune of 30% in the SDLC lifecycle and 80% in terms of improving the CSAT. Now, let's take the first case that is out here, right? Summarization. So basically, you have your processes, policies, procedures, guidelines, all of it. And then you want to measure your compliance against it, right? And summarize that in the form of reports. Generally, it is done by a program office kind of structure, and there's a lot of manual effort involved in getting accurate data, and then collecting the data itself is a huge challenge because you don't have the source of truth. It's people dependent often, right? So that's one of the key areas where organizations are adopting GenAI to improve productivity and how they report out metrics to different stakeholders, right? So using GenAI, obviously you can automate a lot of this, generate summaries, and the summaries can look different for different personas, right? So that's the best part, right? So when you develop a report for the executives, in or leadership or board members or your channel partners, your organization or the members in the pyramid, bottom of the pyramid, typically they don't understand what that report is trying to say, right? Because it's having a very high level executive language, right? Or it's a synopsis, while the people on the ground want to hear the nitty-gritties of it, right? So the grunt work that has gone in and how we're actually doing it. So I think tailoring the report to the liking of the audience is obviously been a huge concern, and that obviously brings in a lot of effort from or productivity loss for organizations. That's where I think summarization as a use case can be extremely effective, irrespective of which industry you are part of, right? So if you're a bank, obviously there are several use cases that you probably need to churn out daily reports, including information that you are supposed to send to the central bank, information that you're supposed to send to your regulators, right, exchange board, all of that, right? So there's a lot of internal processes as well that is expected. Similarly, if you're into IT services, you need to be able to go back and summarize the status of different programs, not just at an individual project level, but at the program level, which may comprise of multiple projects, right? So if you have to create that bird's eye view, obviously it takes a lot of manual effort, right? So that's the first use case here on summarization. And I think this kind of helps you relate to, when we say we can improve employee productivity, how does that happen, right? So here's an example. The next one is, I think, again, a no-brainer. You've got documentation and you're looking to extract information. And then, for that to happen, obviously, you need to be able to provide the right kind of access privileges that are measured, monitored on a regular basis, and seeing who's actually accessing those APIs and extracting information, right? So instead of having this done in a manual way, you can obviously, with workflows automated, you can automate this. Now, where does this apply, right? So let's say you're in the space of data monetization, right? So you've collected a lot of data, and then you have channel partner ecosystem, and you have the consent of your customers to provide non-sensitive information, from your account to channel partners, right? And you're trying to monetize your data. It could be your own organization or a wholly owned subsidiary, or it could be an organization that has spun off from you, etc., etc. Be that as it may, extraction through API obviously would become one of the abilities that you would be able to do, right? So, and then how do you use GenAI to kind of automate that whole process instead of you doing it manually? Inference, right? So I'm working with one of the airports as I speak, and typically we try to come up. I think inferences in the past used to be, okay, what is the sentiment like, right, in the last 3 months or last 1 month, etc. With I think Twitter, or now it's renamed as X, and you got Google reviews and Instagram. The reels move faster, than the speed of the space shuttle sometimes, right? So it's important for organizations to understand what is the real sentiment of end users, right? So with this airport that I talked about, the idea there is to look at information from Google reviews, Facebook, Instagram, right, and other sources, X, which is erstwhile Twitter, and see if you're able to analyze not just what the persona is saying, but also look at the demographics of that user. How often is that user visiting, this particular facility? And has there been like any, negative experience in the past? So you can obviously grade your user saying, oh, he falls into the complaining category, right? So he's a crybaby, and typically, you take feedback with a pinch of salt, but you obviously have scores attached to it, so you can have that kind of ranking. So this is basically called inferencing, right? You're able to infer information and the intelligence that is coming about, and then use automated workflows to take corrective actions, right? So there's this GenAI that tells you what is wrong, and then again, use GenAI capabilities to trigger automation to manage the sentiment better, including the responses, right? And this is where text generation comes in handy. There can be an issue, and you can just go back and say, yes, there is this problem and I'm looking into it. That's just a one line because, it's people dependent. But obviously, GenAI can generate a response which is going to soothe that specific user down, right? If he's in a very irate mode, it can actually generate, a message that is soothing. It can also come up with some kind of promotional offer saying, here's what we've got for you. You've got, this free pass to go access this facility or whatever, right? Or next time you're going to get this, at a 50% discount, those kind of things. if the workflows are automated, you can use GenAI to automatically, deliver that. Transformation, I think we talked about being able to bring data from different sources and again, make them into a standard format. Again, I think there's a similar use case to summarization, but in summarization, you're trying to extract the gist. But here you're trying to, bring everything into one single format so that you're able to roll up metrics, you're able to apply the same lens when you're assessing the impact of, different projects in your organization. Proofreading, oftentimes, one small error in the code can actually, cause issues when you make the release, right? And then, it turns out that it was just a small incorrect command that was executed. And generally, we have the habit of having a second pair of eyes reviewing, the code that you've written, right? But I think it's an open secret that the second pair of eyes never reviews it wholeheartedly, right? So there are issues that have happened even with the second pair of eyes, looking into what somebody else has done, because when you do it, obviously you understand how you've written, but a third party who's reading it may not. There are biases, right? So there is this unconscious bias that says, yes, he might have done you quickly glance through it, you don't see anything, jumping out at you, and then you pass, the proofreading or the peer review, and then we go implement that release, and then it fails, right? And then the questions are asked to both the parties, right? So proofreading, again, being human dependent, has its own flaws. Sometimes it is very effective. The intelligence does not just stop at identifying the error. You can also get good suggestions as well. But that's where I think the corpus becomes handy, right? So what kind of data corpus are you feeding your models? And is it just remaining at identification, or it's also giving you some suggestions, right? So you can automate code formatting, and proofreading exercises in your organization. Personalization, I talked about it in an earlier point, so I'm not going to repeat it. You can generate code as well. If you've generated, you have the access to the source code and you're trying to build something similar, but then you're adding your organization's customizations, or your customers' customizations are being fed into that code, and then you can quickly make those modifications and generate. Secure querying, again, secure high performance querying. So how do you give restricted access to people that matter on that, right? So these are some of the main use cases. And then I think we just will look at how it's being adopted in different industries, right? So we'll touch upon retail, for example, here, right? Fitting rooms of the future, right, is again a GenAI driven use case, right? It starts with curating your product catalog to make sure it is understanding, the model is understanding the persona of the customer, the age, demographics, fashion, style, right? And affordability, based on historical data. So personalize the catalog, personalized ads, understanding the sentiment, expensive, not expensive, you don't have good collection, blah, blah, blah. And then being able to interact with the user to find out if the services provided by the organization is, adding value, right? So moving on to the next slide, we'll take another quick look at aviation industry and how that is. I just talked about hyper-personalization and curation of, curated experience for customers in my previous example. So that's one of them. But you can obviously have targeted marketing exercises based on when you have a higher amount of footfall and what kind of age groups are your visitors, or what kind of lineage your visitors are from, and what are their interests. I'm told that airports are making reservations for people to just come to the airport and buy things based on data analysis, right? So they just come to the airport, they make a purchase because it's much more convenient to make a purchase of something very expensive, more discounts, etc., within the airport as opposed to buying it outside, right? So things are changing. In the past, we said airports are very expensive places to buy anything, but that's changing as well because of targeted marketing. Enriching your knowledge base, efficiency, we talked about productivity. You can use a lot of capabilities on the cloud, on-prem, etc., to be able to do that. Let's move on to the next slide quickly. Now, I think we talked about generative AI and how we are seeing adoption. And we talked about what is GenAI. We looked at the studies in terms of what is research telling us, how things are going to change. And then we also looked at what are we seeing on the ground in terms of use cases. And we took a couple of industries, retail, aviation, but then it's applicable to any and every industry, right? That you can talk about. The next segment here is going to touch upon how you can build a service around GenAI, right? And how you should frame your business plan as you do that, right? So, Ankit, anything that you want to say before we move forward?
Yeah, I think we saw the business, the impact which is happening. Now we'll see how to conceptualize a service or offering or a product around AI and GenAI, right? And how to think on the business plans and what are the ethics. And I think, again, I will request my friend here, Joel, to take us through this 11 steps, right? Or the 11 stages. Joel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ankit, right? So I think before I get into how do you develop a product offering or a service offering and what's the life cycle and what does it entail, I think one of the primary things that we need to keep in mind is you are as good as what you are perceived to be, right? So there is, obviously perception is not the reality, but I think in a market like ours, fortunately or unfortunately, perception becomes the reality. Now, who's actually judging, you, right? So let's say you're a product company, or if you're a product company, there are, let's say, a couple of people who are judging you at the moment, right? The service providers are looking at you and kind of compartmentalizing you in the good, bad, or excellent bucket, right? Customers are looking at your capabilities and how you show up, and again compartmentalizing or bucketing you into different buckets, right? So you are being always judged, right? And if you're not perceived to be a good service provider or a product provider, etc., then obviously making that impact or finding that stickiness with customers, creating that repeat business, reusability is going to be a problem. So I think while it is important to develop a great service, a great product, it is equally important to manage the person. What is the life cycle looking like? There are going to be some references that talk about, how you can, manage the perception around it as well. So let's start with step one, right? So you've got an idea and, you're trying to generate some, innovative capabilities around it, basically an AI product, and you have a vision. Now, I think this is really important, right? And the idea can be, you just woke up one morning and you had a great idea. You scribbled it down in your notepad, went, hit your office, and then you started to put some structure to it and started putting, flesh on the skeletal structure that you had in mind, right? But you obviously need to look at that idea holistically, right? So what is this idea all about, right? So which market segment does it fall under? So how big is that market, right? So what does the market need? Now, what is market? The definition of market is a collection of people or organizations or entities, right, that have a similar need, right? So that is called as a market. So you need to be able to understand if your idea plays into an existing market or you're creating a new market with this idea, right? More often than not, you're playing in an existing market, right? So, and then it's important to understand what is your segment, right? Which market segment do you fall under? And once you've understood this aspect, right, then you start to look at your idea in the context of what others are doing in this space as well, right? So if you've got an idea, the question is, does this idea already have a market? The answer is yes, it's got a market. If there is a market, who's got the share of the market, right? So maybe there are, it's a monopoly, and there's only one player, or there may be two players, or there may be 10 players, or there may be 100 players, right, in that market space. So if that's the market, then what are you trying to achieve, right? So you're trying to get mind share or wallet share, two different things, right? So you need to be very clear on what you're trying to establish, right? So non-profit organizations, most of the time, are looking for mind share, right? In the sense that, they want people to be dependent on them for thought leadership, for ideas, and come back and share their inputs and their experiences so that we can package that all up, bottle that all up, and then start sharing at a wider platform, right? So there are a lot of non-profit organizations which focus on getting the mind share of its audience, right? So if your idea is to create a product which has to capture some share of the wallet, then obviously you need to do the market study to understand what is the segment, who are your competitors, how are they approaching it, and is your idea unique, right? Is it copying another idea with some minor tweaks, or you've got something that is very unique, right? And therefore you don't have competition. Now, if you're playing in a space that is already crowded, you can still play in that space, right? So nothing wrong in doing that. In business terms, it's called straddling, right? I think a great example of straddling is, I think, since everybody here is from India, so I will give IPL as the example, right? So was IPL an innovation, by the BCCI? The answer is no, right? So you obviously had the English Premier League in the soccer space, and that everybody knew what it had done. And then there was an attempt made in India. If you turn the clock back, there was an organization or an event called ICL, right? India Cricket League. So they made something similar, but they could not execute it well, right? The idea was great, but the execution was poor. The consensus was not there. So then came IPL. They strengthened the execution. They focused on branding and awareness and a lot of other things, consensus, etc. And they were, obviously very successful, as you all know. So you can have an idea which is straddling another idea, right? IPL was straddling EPL. So you can straddle other products or other SIs, etc., of course. But then you need to know what is that segment which is differentiating you and what is that uniqueness you are bringing into the equation, right? So that is important to understand. What's the novelty in your product or your innovation, right? And then it's not just stopping at one innovation, right? So you take Apple and the distance it's covered. It wasn't one innovation, right? Over the last 20-25 years, they've done several thousands of innovations, and they continue to do that and continue to surprise us. So you have that great idea, but then how can you create a funnel which continues to pour fresh ideas in, either to improve your own existing product right now that you have, or it is in the area of creating new products, right? So that's the whole part of making sure you capture the idea and give it a shape, align it to the market segment, which segment of the market you're trying to play, understand your competition, understand your ecosystem. Now, the idea is great. It's in a market that's, you can have some kind of a monopoly in that market if you move fast. Next part becomes important, right? The market research. So here you can have a fantastic idea, but then the question is there a problem that this idea solves, right? Market is again defined by, commercial market is always defined by an existing problem. So there is a problem, there is a solution, and there is a service provider, and there is a product, right? And that is the ecosystem which, keeps this whole cycle running. At the end of the day, the promise is we're going to solve this problem, right? So it is important to understand on whether that problem is a big problem today, or it is a livable problem, right? It is a problem that we can continue to have. Or in other words, will customer... So the question goes like this, right? So what is the problem? This is the problem. Does the customer want to solve that problem? Yes, the customer wants to solve that problem. The question is, does the customer want to solve that problem now? There are a lot of issues, let's say, in the ecosystem, and enterprises are okay to, kind of live on with them, right? So do enterprises want to solve those issues currently, or they want to solve it at a later point? For example, mobility, right? Electric mobility. It's a strategic decision, right? There is incentives that are given, etc., etc. But then if you put all your money to create or build a charging station 10 years ago, we would have gone insolvent by now, right? Because the speed at which the adoption was expected is not what it is. So you need to kind of look at your innovation in the context of, again, going back to my point on mind share versus wallet share. So if you're looking at wallet share, then you need to be able to assess whether enterprises are going to pay for that service now, right? And then the next question is, how much are they going to pay for it, right? And what are your costs? and how do you want to price, and how are you going to become profitable, right? So that's the initial market research and the analysis part on whether there is commercial merit or there is monetizability of your idea, right? And how are you going to do that? And the third is, obviously screening of your, product in the space. What is the market fit from a tech assessment point of view? How does it, address the requirements? How easy is it to integrate? And then you have, a clear value proposition and potential, what products you're going to unroll and what is the value proposition that comes with it. And then you need to obviously test, put it through rigorous testing, like through your prototyping exercises. And it's important to get user validation and user feedback as you do that, so that you have your concept car in place. Now, business strategy, business analysis, strategy formation, and return on investment, right? So here's, this is another very important aspect of generating your, offering or developing your offering. So we talked about understanding the market potential. Obviously, there's primary data, secondary data to be able to understand the market potential. And what is your share of the, what is the targeted share of the market that you're trying to achieve, and how are you going to do that? And over the next 5-year time frame, what is the promise? And how are you going to go to market, right? So you have this strategy for business expansion, but then you need to be able to back it up with what kind of returns you can expect on the investment. And to be able to get the returns, what is your pricing model, right? So there are two kinds, by and large, there are two types of pricing models. You got cost plus pricing, which means if your cost of producing something is, let's say 10 lakh rupees, right? You say you want to have a margin of 30%, right? So you sell it at 13 lakh rupees, and that's your 30% margin. And net profit, obviously, with other expenses going down, might be still lower. So that is a very simple strategy of using a cost plus pricing model. There's another aspect to this, or there is another model of developing your pricing, which is value pricing, right? So we're not really counting the costs of what it took for you to build it, but then you're trying to analyze it for the value that it brings and the uniqueness that you have in the marketplace, right? So are you able to build something which is not doable by anybody else? So let me take you back to step 1, right? So when you're generating the idea and you're conceptualizing it in step 4, you're screening the idea, etc. You also need to put on another thinking cap that says how I'm going to put entry barriers for competition to not be able to come into this space and challenge me in the near term, right? So what are those entry barriers, right? So obviously your idea needs to be well thought out, researched, screened, and then you need to have it conceptualized, tested, and you have a business expansion plan so that you don't run out of oxygen, after year 1 or year 2. So once you've done this, right, and you've actually taken your business forward. So let me give this example of Tesla, right, in the US market, right? So they were the pioneers in the EV space, and it started off as an EV play, quite frankly, right? And then nobody remembers Tesla for being an electric car, right? So today the name and fame that it's got is because of its ability to use AI, having taken AI to the next level of making cars that are, 100%, human independent, right? So they can drive on their own and park on their own and all of that, right? And it's proven that it's safer to sit in a driverless car than, if a chauffeur is actually ferrying you. And well, the idea is simple, right? Why didn't anybody else? Why didn't the Fords of the world, the Fiats of the world, and the Toyotas of the world? Why weren't they able to replicate it and build something similar? Because obviously the entry barriers were huge, right? So they built, the Great Wall of China around their idea. It is not just the concept of giving that experience to the customer, right? So it's obviously the research that's gone into it, the distribution network, the IP that they're bringing in. So they've put a lot of entry barriers so that at that cost they're not going to be able to deliver another use case. Nobody else is going to be able to do it in the next 2-3 years. Obviously, if they put a lot of R&D money for several years, they're going to be able to build something similar. But then next 3 years, my market, and going back to the business expansion plan and how you're going to price it, because you have this uniqueness, and because you've already done the study that customer wants to pay for this service now because there's a problem that he or she cannot live with. There you go, right? So you've hit that market, you started to capture, and that's where I think reaching that stage is probably step one. But being able to continue that same momentum, that same trajectory takes a lot of effort, right? So that's where successful promoters have that entrepreneurial itch, that continues to live on, right? So I think I want to give an example of the founder of Biocon, right? So Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, right? So she started, I think she did her engineering degree in biotechnology several years ago when nobody even talked about biotechnology, right? And she started off, if for those of you who don't know, she was working with United Breweries, and she was basically testing enzymes needed for the beverage industry, right? So that is where she started off, right? And she used that learning to be able to build an empire in the genetic engineering space, right? And over the last 30-40 years, being able to constantly develop new solutions that is needed by the market, and pricing them at a level that it continues to get the adoption. Now, obviously, she's achieved great heights, right? And she had personal setbacks in the last few years, and the market probably was thinking that yeah, this is the end, right? She's done. She's probably going to hand over the baton and move on with her life, etc., right? But obviously that itch, the entrepreneurial itch, is so strong that it continues to keep you up at night on what is the new innovation that we can do, right? Can I go visit France, Germany? Let's see what they're doing. Right? You continue to invest in learning what is happening on the field, right? So great capabilities, great products are not built in meeting rooms. It's always built by being out there on the field and interacting with real sponsor users or real users of the end capability. So it's important to continue to innovate, even after you've launched a capability and it's seen some success. Now, I think obviously when you develop and train and integrate your models, all the things that you've heard about in session 1, session 2, and I think the initial part of this session as well. So are you able to infuse all of that into your capability? And then is the end user experience improving because of that, right? So are we able to provide that integrations into the product as a user in an enterprise? Are they able to use the API economy to fully integrate your product into their ecosystem with minimal disruption and with minimal dependency on your professional services, right? So how can you build a capability which has very limited dependency on your professional services? Because if there is a dependency on you to be able to make it work every time, so that puts an entry barrier, in the negative sense, not in a positive sense. And then, of course, the product development engine is extremely important, making sure that you have the right product management team, the right research. So this is where the rubber hits the road, right? So far, you've talked about concept and all of that, but here now you're talking about features and functions. So what is the end experience from feature function standpoint? And then how is your iterative process, agile process, fail fast process helping you in that journey to be able to, do a dipstick? And if it's not meeting the expected outcomes, you got to be able to declare failure soon, right? You got to be able to say that this is not what we envisioned, I think what we thought was X, and then what we're getting now is X minus 20%, right? So you've got to hit that course correct button and see how you can go back to the drawing board and, not obviously repeat all the steps, but, try and see, what can be tweaked to get the desired results. Go-to-market strategy formation and pilot launch. I think how well you're going to launch your capability is the first impression always is the best impression, as they say, right? So you got to be able to have the right kind of marketing branding strategy to be able to create a go-to-market function for yourself. And what that means is, you got to be able to create what is called as brand recall, right? So you can have an excellent product, but if you've not strategically positioned yourself in conferences, in different events, you're not sponsoring events, or you're not showing up in places where you should be showing up, obviously the brand recall is going to be very limited, right? So you got to be able to have a very well-defined marketing strategy. So you need to have the right marketing agencies that you're partnering with, and then create that uniqueness from a branding standpoint. And the brand needs to be simple enough for people to recall. You don't want to give it a very complicated name that either people don't understand, or you're not able to recall. My favorite example here is Apple, right? So how simple is it to relate to that term and being able to recall? And then when people hear your brand name, they need to be able to relate that to user experience, need to be able to relate that to something unique. These are the qualities that you want to look for as you create your brand, and your punchline, and what it appears, right? Or what is the perception? I started off my talk on this slide with perception being reality. So when you create a brand and you create something, obviously you have that unconscious bias saying you're doing a great job there, but just go and test it out with your somebody who's your competition, for example, right? Or it could be somebody who tells you things on the face, right? And say, just give me some feedback. How does this look, right? So you're going to get feedback from two areas or two circles. One will tell you what you want to hear, and the second circle will tell you what you probably don't want to hear, but is the reality. So I would actually spend a lot of time, I would encourage you to spend a lot of time in the second quadrant, because that's where you're getting feedback today that you can correct, which I think 3 years later is probably beyond the possibility of making corrections. Launch and monitoring, I think, pretty straightforward. And then the post launch review, collection, feedback, iterative processes, obviously continues, right? So continuous innovation, continuous learning, continuous course correction is important. I think one word that we will have to erase from the dictionary is ignore, right? So feedback, comments, status updates, any negative vibes that you're seeing, or getting any negative vibes as a promoter, or as a founder, you got to be able to give it the attention, right? So even if it is even if it is a small thing that you heard, but then you realize that, okay, it can potentially disrupt your commercial launch, or it can disrupt your go-to-market strategy or perception, etc. You got to be able to invest the right amount of time and get the right level of expertise, right? So there is forums such as these that NASSCOM is organizing. I'm sure there's access to a lot more resources and competencies and forums where help can be provided. So if there is a problem that you're not able to solve at your level, obviously there's help that's available, right, within the industry. So I would say in a nutshell, start with the problem statement. Obviously you have an idea, but is that solving a problem? Is there a solution to the problem? Yes, you got a solution to the problem. Does the industry want to adopt that problem? Yes, the industry wants to adopt that problem. The answer is no. There's no point of continuing down that path, right, on that idea. If the answer is yes, right, we want a solution to the problem, are enterprises willing to solve that problem now, or 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, whatever that time frame might be? If the answer is now, then are they willing to pay for it, right? Or is this something they expect will come through the ecosystem, right? You don't need to be able to pay for it. And lastly, if they're willing to pay for it, am I the only person that they're going to buy this service from, or there are 50 others? If there are 50 others, then how is my branding and capability and my launch and my experience, right? The experience that I'm going to give to my customers, how is that providing that distinctive value, and therefore the differentiation? So these are aspects. And then I think, are you looking for mind share or wallet share? If it's wallet share, all of these things that I talked about becomes extremely critical. So that's my 2 cents on this subject. Moving on to the next slide.
Yeah. Just to add, I think, friends, I think this is 11 very thought through steps, right? Which, the large enterprises use to develop an offering and keep on re-innovating. So I will request you to take a snapshot. And again, we have a YouTube video for this one. Please do, have a look at that. I think wonderful explanation by Joel, how he took us through the whole process, right? So thank you, Joel. I think we can move to next slide. Joel, I think Joel, in interest of time, I think I will request you to complete next slide in 7 minutes so that we can give 10 minutes for the Q&A. So, yeah.
Sure. I think, okay, all right. So in the previous slide, we talked about the whole business cycle. This slide at a high level talks about how you can move a customer, right, the adoption journey from being an early adopter to leveraging GenAI in a secure manner, with data privacy, data security guidelines, being honored, right? So from an early adopter point of view, obviously you define the goals, you define the journey. What are the goals for generative AI? So this can typically be done in the form of a workshop that you have with your customer to kind of get down their business leadership and understand what are their goals. Once you've identified the use cases, then you need to have a GenAI strategy, right? So, and the strategy needs to be aligned with your AI strategy and business strategy, right? Because you will not find adoption. And I think that's something I'm going to touch upon in the next slide as well. Because whenever you're trying to build a change in culture, right? So adoption of GenAI is basically a change in culture as well, right? Because you're trying to now depend on AI models as opposed to time-tested processes and human interventions and, reviews and all of that, right? So you're trying to automate that whole process. Now, obviously, once you built out a strategy, you need to have, some kind of rapid prototyping pilot program to prove the value. Because if you say, yeah, this is the concept, but I'm going to show you how it works after 12 months, you're going to lose your audience, right? The business will not support you. So you got to be able to have some kind of a pilot program, and you can have, test environments, lab environments, blah, 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 where you can actually do that, right? And once you've piloted it, you create some kind of an AI governance to monitor and measure what is the adoption. And there are some metrics that I will share with you that you can, kind of measure to see if there is the right level of adoption. So after you've, sort of established that cadence and governance on the artificial intelligence front, including model management and all of that, LLM ops being, the most recent aspect of that, you then roll out the use cases, right? So you select your user personas and then you roll out the use cases and monitor what's the feedback you're getting from that ecosystem. So once you've done this successfully, and then you've seen good adoption, you're getting feedback, you're constantly improving. You obviously, from an end state perspective, you want to make sure that data security, privacy is coded into the process itself, right? You're not compromising on those aspects, and have a day two model to manage the generative AI ecosystem or managing the large language models that are powering on GenAI use cases. Now, another important aspect is, organizations undergo transformation. So your requirement might have started with, ABC, but, as you've implemented this and, you've hit 6th month or 7th month of running, there may be some new requirements that are coming in as well. So you've got to be able to retrain the model and evaluate if for fitment in the current context, or you want to be, if there are changes needed, how do you make those changes, right? And ultimately, you measure the performance of the model accuracy, model serving, and whether it is improving the parameters or the metrics that you were hoping to improve when you sat down with the customer and started laying out the goals for GenAI. Now, as part of this process, there are use cases that you're enabling, including code transformation, generation, hyper-personalized support. You can obviously use a lot of these anecdotal examples as motivation for users at various levels to participate and support this initiative. So that, move on to the next slide. Yeah. So here are some factors that you should consider. Obviously, we outlined the steps involved, but first largest, I would say, focus item here would be to make sure you sit down with the business team, understand what is your business strategy at an enterprise level. And then the AI goals or Gen AI goals needs to be aligned with the business goals, right? That is one of the important aspects. Otherwise, Adoption is going to be difficult because, people are going to struggle to relate to how what they are using today is, relating back to their corporate strategy or what they heard from the CEO, right? So that connection has to happen. In consulting, it's called strategy tree, right? So you got to be able to create that strategy tree from the business strategy to your AI strategy and roadmap and tools and products and processes, right? So you need to be able to have that waterfall. And once you've done that, okay, you know that it's aligned with strategy, therefore you're going to have less entry barriers or path of least resistance. There's a famous book called Path of Least Resistance, right? So I'm just using that term here. So how do you build consensus? By making sure you first approach people who are going to probably support using path of least resistance. Once you've garnered that support, 20, 30, 40% of the support that you need, then you go and get the support of potential detractors that you thought may not support you. And then take a fail fast approach, as I kind of described in the previous slide as well. And for any AI models to succeed, 90% of the projects fail because of ETL issues or issues with data quality, and we talked about smart querying, etc. So when you don't have query performance that is needed for hyper-personalization, GenAI typically does a lot of hyper-personalization use cases, right? So it is going to fail because there is an underlying dependency on data ecosystem. So if you're delivering a product or if you're delivering a service in the GenAI space, it's important for you to assess if the organization has a data strategy, right? And if you're not operating in that space, there are SIs, there are boutique consulting firms, etc., who do. So you can always partner with them. So that is the other point of building your service partner ecosystem as well. And lastly, keep the end user experience in mind, because ultimately the users should be able to consume it without applying a lot of brain power, right? Or in other words, you need not be a Harvard graduate or an IITN or an IIM graduate to be able to use it. It should be dumbed down to a version that anybody can be able to use it with some degree of confidence, right? So that's primarily it. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about what are some metrics that you can use to measure the success of AI projects when you are implementing this in any organization. There are some qualitative aspects to it. There are quantitative aspects to this as well. These are metrics, right? And when I say metrics, for each of this, you can have KPIs below them, right? So for example, leadership commitment, you might want to measure it in a certain way, right? It could be in the form of, when your leader is speaking at a town hall, right? Or an all hands event or an annual function, right? Are they talking about GenAI in that forum, right? Or is it appearing on their website, blah, blah, blah. So you need to be able to see whether you're getting the leadership commitment, and you might have your own ways of measuring it in the form of KPIs. Culture change management, number of detractors, number of negative service tickets that have been raised, or escalations, etc. So you might be able to get a sense of whether it is causing some dissatisfaction. And program adoption, right? So which is basically number of users and status of, are you facing a lot of issues, therefore your implementation is getting delayed or adoption is getting delayed. So any delays in program adoption, obviously points you back to some kind of issues, right? Underlying issues which are coming in the way of adoption, right? And on the quantitative side, you had a target number of users, and therefore as you trained, what was the how many people showed up, and after showing up, are they using it? What is the usage tracker telling you? And we talked about improvement in productivity. Have you set up measurement systems for it? Therefore you need the commitment of the leadership as well, right? Because you're setting up some mechanisms to be able to measure it. Reduction in human errors. If you're in manufacturing industry, there's a lot of human dependency in quality inspection. And there were obviously errors, right, as that happened. So are you seeing some reduction in that? And lastly, you're applying GenAI to improve your business, align with your strategy. It needs to obviously reflect in revenue improvement, profitability metrics. And then if your project is costing, X amount of dollars, there needs to be a method of how are you going to return the investment. The solution would need to pay for itself, right? So how are you going to prove that? Through your business value calculators, you need to obviously have that, which and define what are the input attributes. And in a very simplistic fashion, you've got to be able to say what are going to be the returns. Now, we all have heard about data incidents, right? Breaches, etc. But since I think we've established in the last 3 sessions that AI is, driving business models or changing business models, it is important to also put in place some kind of a AI failure detection mechanism in the enterprises. And when that happens, when your AI models fails, what is that whole service management process around it, right? So what are we going to fix it? What is the SLA? You got to be able to define these as well. So these are just illustrative metrics. There can be a lot more, and each of these can have multiple KPIs that sit underneath each of these high-level metrics. But this is a good starting point for you to see if the adoption is working, and then the results are favorable or unfavorable. If they are unfavorable, is there a problem with the execution, or is there a problem with the features and functions itself? And is that going back to the strategy itself? So I'll leave you with one quote. You got to have the right strategy, but then you need to have the right execution capabilities as well. And then if you're executing, you need to have a strategy. So the quote goes like this, right? Strategy without execution is dreaming. So I'll repeat, right? Strategy without execution is dreaming, and execution without strategy is wandering. So you don't want to be dreaming, or you don't want to be wandering, right? So you got to be able to find the right or strike the right balance between the two. So with that, I think we end here and open the forum for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Joel, for the amazing walkthrough of how a SME can think, build a service, product, business line on AI, and what are the qualitative way of measuring it, right? So thank you very much for that. So guys, we are open for Q&A. Do we have questions here with us? Jagati, you would want to pick up questions and let us know, and we can answer. We both can answer.
Sure. So just let me know whether you can see the Q&A box in your logo panel.
I can see. There are 2 questions, right?
Yeah.
So first question, okay, so let me answer this, and then parallelly, if anyone asks, we can do that. So I think first question is on the stats or the numbers what we showed to basically everyone in the impact and the GenAI emerging trends, right? So this one basically is just coming out. I think it's a predicted one. So basically the data points are predicted ones, but again as we go ahead, I think we'll release the whole research report, and everyone can have access on that. So that's first question. The second one is how IT service organization can start building capabilities on AI and GenAI so that they could benefit to their customers in any shape and form, right? So I think so IT services organization, right? So you are already servicing, or you're giving service to your customer in various facets of IT, and supporting them. Here, I think what I think Joel, you can add to that, and Maulik, you can also add to that, is that you have to start with current niche or current connect what we have, right? And there's a specific 4-step process, right? Descriptive, diagnostic, proactive, and prescriptive, right? And then automation, right? So I think these are the 5 steps typically you will have to think through of any use case, right? First, you have to start assessing the service what you're offering to a customer. What level of hierarchy you are at. Now, are you really having the data so that you can give descriptive analytics? Are you really having some maturity so that you can give proactive, prescriptive, you can automate it, all of that, right? So you have to think on that, and that's a journey. So you have to start from your current access point in the current customer environment and grow from that, right? So I'll take a pause. Joel, Maulik, and any inputs from you on this?
I think one possibly, especially from the IT services point of view, can be considered, and I think Joel covered that in one of the earlier slides, was customer experience and services. And I think there was also mentioned during one of the slides he presented, though it was related to airline industry, but I think the mention of fast responses to customer incidents, for example, could also be adapted very well. I think then there are ideas which how do you kind of from customer, to be able to kind of identify and check what are the other areas where you can possibly help clients to diversify their different service lines, and how you can possibly add to those service lines and different product or service portfolios by your service offerings to that. But in my opinion, I think customer experience, and I think the incident management is something I can think of can possibly be implemented well.
I think just to add, thank you, Maulik ji, for that. And just to add there, I think 3 key metrics, right? So in handling end user experience through your incident management process. So one, which is, mean time to identify, right? So how much time are you taking? Back to what Ankit mentioned, descriptive, diagnostic, prescriptive, predictive, right? So are you using the right predictive analytics or AI mechanisms in your IT services management, framework? And then if you have that, what is your mean time to identify an issue? And then mean time to isolate the issue. There are two, MTTI1 and MTTI2. And then it's not just identifying and isolating, but what is the time taken to repair, right? So mean time to repair. And then I think there's, obviously you had issues and you fixed them, but you obviously don't want them to happen too often. So another metric that you can measure is mean time between failures, MTBF, right? So that can be another metric that you can put in place. And obviously this keeps telling you whether, what is the direction in which you're heading, right? So are you seeing this? Is there a pervasive problem that is there a behavioral problem, or this is more a one-off, right? And you need to be able to identify those behavioral problems and address them through a very strong incident management process, right? As Maulik ji mentioned, and we are in the era of DevOps. So I think the way we've traditionally thought about incident management also has changed, right? The definition from ITIL itself has changed. The lines have become blurry. The gatekeepers are not there. There are roles like site reliability engineering and all of that. So you need to be aware of the changing trends in the ITS as you do that.
Great.
And I think I would like to add one other area which is more internal towards the IT services businesses is the project management, right? I think that's where possibly summarizing statuses to kind of measuring key metrics is, and then of course deriving few interesting perspectives is very important to be able to kind of manage the entire project management cycle better, and I think also predict to an extent. So I believe that's one thing, and I think Joel, you can possibly expand to that a little, but I believe that's one area which comes to my mind as well, which can be possibly be used.
No, absolutely. I think program management, and project management is very key, because again, we talked about execution, making sure the execution rigor is in place, and you're using the and you're monitoring, like you don't want to deliver something at any cost, right? So managing the costs, managing the scope, managing the expectations, obviously is extremely important, and you need to be able to use project management principles. There's well-tested methods available. And then in the SDLC lifecycle, you've got, Scrum management. Yep. So, you've got to be able to use a lot of them. Get yourself Scrum certified. So I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think we could not take more questions, but again, I think there are enough assets developed by nasscom.ai and with the ecosystem. Like we have developed a PMI handbook, right? Working with PMI on specifically how you can handle AI and data and AI project, right? So similarly, we have developed handbooks on a lot of entry points, right, which can help. So probably you guys can reach out to Pragati, Chetan, Saurabh, and also to me, and then we'll be happy to take you through or give you more insights and material what we have developed, and that is all developed for you. So we essentially want our SME, the ecosystem to leverage whatever we are building openly and utilize it for themselves and their customers. Yeah.
I think sorry, Ankit, go ahead.
No. I was just handing to you, Maulik.
Yeah. No, I think very interesting perspectives, but Joel and Ankit, if you were to share 2 or 3 verticals or domains within which one can think of AI and generative AI being adopted very rapidly, which our businesses can think of and can think of further opportunities or products within those domains, what those 3 or 4 domains would be for to look at.
So, okay, so let me go and then Joel, you can add. So 3 domains, I think again will be as we saw here, right? So we have numbers for that, right? This slide, right? Sorry. Yeah. Here, I think the high tech, retail, banking, travel, transport, and logistics. These are the biggest, highly impacted domains, right? And these are the good entry point, right? These are if you see the numbers are the $1 billion impact happening in this industry. So these are good entry points. So high tech, I think, assume we are all high tech, but again, I think the ER&D and all of that is one. Retail, banking, travel, transport, logistics. These are top 3 or 4, right? Joel, you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the retail and banking, right? So these 2, and banking not in the traditional sense, but your loan approved in 15 seconds. All these apps that you've got in that whole ecosystem, they are going to be like and obviously even the large banks are looking at it. GenAI is sort of helping banks, right? Without necessarily naming them. A large bank in India is using GenAI to create an equivalent of a credit score for borrowers who don't have a credit score, right? A lot of them don't even have a PAN card, right? So I think, but they're still able to get them have a PAN card, but at the same time arrive at some kind of credit score based on the behavior pattern itself of those individuals, right? So a lot of fintech companies are using GenAI and travel logistics. So I would agree with that. So these are the areas where you're seeing a lot of GenAI adoption, and that represents opportunity as well.
So a few more questions.
Yeah. We are at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Should we continue or should we end? Up to you, Maulik ji and Jagriti, what do you recommend? Should we continue? We can take one more last question and then we can end if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maulik ji, which question you would want us to answer, me and Joel?
This is very interesting, and I don't know which one to pick up, but all are really pretty interesting ones. One thing which I saw is, I'm sorry.
Nothing, sir. Please continue.
Okay. It says, I saw in one of the slides the pricing point, pressure point. Can you please elaborate on it? Does this mean the services we provide around GenAI is going to be under pressure for cost?
Yeah. So what is the pressure point is, those areas are getting discussed, right? Those areas are getting negotiated for a pricing renegotiation or a pricing discussion. That's what it meant. Yeah. Let me jump to that slide. I think it was, but again, I think that is what it meant. But we can move to next question. Meanwhile, I'm going to that slide. Oh, wow.
Okay. I think more or less we have covered in one of the other questions. For example, yes, education domain is one critical use case, identifying text created by GenAI. I wouldn't deny that, and I'm sure Joel and Ankit both would agree to that. Someone is saying, Jimit is saying, I'm in software services. How do I start implementing AI for client delivery? Where do I start?
I think first set is start using GenAI for your own software development. Once you do that, you'll increase your productivity, reduce your overheads. At the same time, then you can find opportunities to give that back to a customer. And that's how you start implementing. If you're in software development or software services, and definitely the operations part, the DevOps part, or the support part of it, you can use a lot of tools to do that. I think that's how you do it. That's the entry point.
Yeah, and I would just say that you need to start doing it today, because if you're not doing it, somebody else will, and they will be able to do it at 30% the cost and improve CSAT by 80%, right? If you're not doing that. So I think the need is to be able to do it today, right? So.
Fantastic.
Great. Yeah.
I think that's that. And thank you so much, Ankit and Joel. And this, I'm sure, was very informative. I mean, there are several points where our friends are asking if this deck will be available to them, or
the deck,
or how are we going to be able to?
The deck will not be, but again, the report will be launched and that can be shared with everyone. And the video definitely will be available, so they can reference that.
Right. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
It was an honor and a privilege to be here, and I wish all our SMEs on the call the best, and yeah, may you succeed and become one of the big promoters in may you list right. So yeah, with that wish, thanking NASSCOM for this. Yes.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for the session. Thank you, everyone. And for any queries regarding the topic, you can just mail at the similar ID that has been there in the chat box. We'll get back to you at the earliest. Thank you for joining in today's session. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, friends. Take good care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.